Hello, everybody. Welcome to Feed the Beast. Today, we are talking about organizing your story. Last time, we talked about journaling and getting everything down of the story. Now, we're going to talk about how we get it organized. Let's figure out a way to get our fiction together and let's make it work.
How do you fill in this blank page? Join your hosts, Ted and John, in the quest to create conflicts, characters, storylines, all that is needed to feed the beast.
Hello, welcome. I am Ted Davies. I'm an artist and author, best known for my book, my sci-fi book Retrieve, and my graphic or gothic novel, I guess, Grim 101. So, welcome everybody. Who's the guy next to me here?
I'm John Celestri. I'm a 45 plus year veteran of classic animation, and I've done comic books. And I animated the initial appearance of Boba Fett in the Star Wars Holiday Special, and worked on whole kinds of stuff. But anyway, we're talking about um, storytelling, and
Yes,
that's where we are. So.
today we had a. If you guys haven't seen the last show or the last several shows, but the last show specifically about journaling and getting your ideas down, check that out. Please check it out because
Mm,
it's a wealth of knowledge. John's been doing this a long time, a lot longer than I have.
mm,
But we both bring two different perspectives, some similarities, but two different perspectives on building a story.
mhm.
We wanted to talk a little bit about the fiction side of it. I mean, we're both fiction writers.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's I think even fiction has some autobiographical stuff in it. I don't think you can get around it as an author. What do you think?
Well, no, you have to put yourself into the
Mm,
story, and I
hmm.
mean that's where we just to skip back to the previous episode. We talk
Hmm.
about journaling, which is putting yourself and your thoughts into it. But
Yes.
when we're talking about doing whether it be fiction or history, you have to come to it with a point of view. What are you trying to say? What is your
Yes.
theme?
Yes.
I'm not talking about a pitch. I'm talking
Hmm.
about what is the essence of the story. Is it, is it a young person learning a fact of life? Are we talking about a universal truth
Hmm.
of some sort? What is your point of view? And you can't start putting pieces together until you know what you're trying to build.
Correct. And is it, a lot of the stuff that I notice that when I write, it's a lot of narrative points.
Mhm.
It's character driven, obviously, but I find that I'm this voice telling you about this character. I find that
Right.
a lot, and then so it's interesting when you're writing, um, and the characters are speaking to each other, and you've got some type of dialogue because
Mhm.
it's almost like there's three people in the story because there's still a narrator in the back of my mind.
Mhm.
And so point of view is extremely important.
Yeah.
And what you're trying to achieve in the story. Is this a development for the character? Is this an epic
Yeah.
journey? What are you trying to do? And
Right.
that's the basis of today's show, trying to get a grasp of our overall.
Right.
How do you handle organizing? What's your do you do post-it notes? How do you handle the
Well,
overall?
in terms of, I have, we've talked about post-it notes to put down ideas and such,
Hmm.
and organizing it that way. I start with the idea of who is the main protagonist,
Hmm.
and I
Hmm.
start with what is the goal, what's the want, and what is the need of that character. And then I'll say, okay, now you got your protagonist. Now you have to have your antagonist, and the antagonist doesn't have to be a person. It could be a situation.
Okay.
It could be a society. It could be an environment. So, what is the struggle between the two?
Mhm.
That
That
is,
that's simple. Yeah, but it's
yeah,
truth. It's truth. What do you find is harder? Do you find it's harder for antagonist to write about the anti or the prota how is the for
well,
you?
actually, when I write my characters, I have to understand what motivates each, and you have to find to have a pure hero boring.
Hmm.
To have a purely evil a villain is boring.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, I mean, you have to. There has to be some reason for both of them to share a certain amount of grayness and whiteness.
Yeah.
And I mean that is, you know, the hero cannot be purely white. There
Yeah.
has to be a struggle. So there's a dark element that
Yeah.
they're dealing with. There has for the villain, I think of it, there has to be a certain kind of human, whether it be a supernatural
Some
weapon, but still
redeeming
a
quality
human.
or yeah.
There has to be something
Yeah.
that motivated that person, that or that's an entity to move forward, that a human can understand. How that person is working against you, and how and the morality, you know,
Hmm.
that goes against, that cuts against what you think is right and wrong. Well, that's the choice that the villain has done. So you have to have an understanding of both to make it work, because the plot points are just, you know, they're structurally, and even if it's just a conversation, there has to be plot points of what you're talking about. What are you arguing about?
Yeah. Yeah. You have
So
so that's the beginning of it. I mean,
yeah.
really, I what I usually do is I'll take one piece of paper and it's kind of like a pros con thing,
Mhm,
and I'll put not pros writing, but
mhm,
pro and con. And it's basically I'll take the character, the good guy, and then the bad guy, or the or whatever the situation that they're in.
mhm,
And I, since I'm an artist and you understand this as an
yeah,
artist animator, I draw a picture
mhm,
character reference
mhm,
right off the bat because it gets me thinking how that character the mannerisms are shown,
mhm,
um whether they're good, evil, flawed, not flawed, and just subtle things like the shirt that they wear or maybe the scruff on their beer, anything that will lend me to get that development of that story part, because
mhm,
it's not the storyline but just the part to get me down that
mm,
line of storytelling. I
mhm.
don't know if there's a really it's a perfect way to do it, but that's for me that works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I like to when I think about a character, I think about not just about what their their shape is or whatnot. I think about, are they dealing with any physical aspect that is, you know, sort of makes that character different from the others? You
Yeah.
know, there has to be a characteristics of some sort. Would it be a small character if the character is very short or very fat or very tall?
Hmm.
Other, you know, get into their heads as to how they feel about themselves.
Mm, okay.
You know, I
Yeah.
mean, we have, you know, we talk about, oh, let's get right to the point of the story. Well, okay, but this is your backstory. This is the preparation so that you know just how the character will feel. You
Got it.
know, there's a thing with Solstein,
Hmm.
who he wrote a book, and I that was back in the '90s that I picked up. I mean, I
Hmm.
picked it up back then, and it was, you know, in it, it's the idea of every character you give, a character has a script. Okay, you give the character, you know, an actor back way, and then another character another script. You know, they don't know what the other script is. They
Oh,
just are going by their script, and the difference between the two is what kind of conflict you have.
okay. Got it.
You know, it's no, it's not fun. Even within even when you have characters that are working from on the same page, there has to be some kind of conflict, because otherwise, why have two?
It's drab. Yeah, it's yeah, you're bored. You're
Yeah,
bored. You're boring the reader and you as the author, you as
yeah,
the writer.
yeah.
How do you feel when you have multiple characters? How does that work for you in the same
Well,
venue or same arena, if you want to call it that? Is it harder? It must be. I mean, just
well,
to be
I
physical.
have a lot of different characters.
Hmm.
Um, when I was writing the Little Mexico books, which were
Yeah.
two crime fiction novels,
Hmm.
we had a lot of various characters, and each character basically had a purpose in the role. For example, we had a core group of the father, and Pearl and Carlo and
Hmm.
Joey, and they were the family. But then you had an outsider who come in as a brother, became a brother to the son, so came into that family as part of
Hmm.
it. So there was dynamics in
Okay.
there. The outsider coming into the family or being trustworthy.
Sure.
You
And
know,
seeing if it's yeah, and seeing if they're family material, right?
well,
Throughout
yeah,
that
well, yeah,
you're ready
that's
for
what it
them
is.
to be backstabbing, maybe possibly as you're reading the story. I'm sure you're.
Well, yeah. I mean, you had, for example, let's just talk about there's an example. It's best to be specific
Mhm.
versus just going. Let's say you
Sure.
had Carlo and Carmelo and Pearl,
Okay.
and those are the two. The mother and the father, but they're in their 40s. And the son is 20, 22, and this is during World War II.
Okay.
It's after the fact, and the son's coming back to the casino in Newport, Kentucky,
Okay.
of the 1940s. This is I'll set you the scene here, okay?
Mhm.
It's historical. So uh, before this, there was Las Vegas. There was Newport, Kentucky,
Okay.
which was where most of the mobsters were able to, the gang members from
Mhm.
the Cleveland Syndicate, Detroit,
Mhm.
and New York and what have you. They all were able to set up casinos and supper clubs in northern
Interesting.
Kentucky
Interesting.
because it was sort of a gang a no man's land,
Got it.
basically. This is historically true.
Hmm. Okay.
Okay. So anyway, so you have this family running a casino, a supper club, and they've been doing this very well. And Joey, is coming back from the war, and he's bringing his pal, Nick,
Mhm. Mhm.
and because they've been pals together, Nick is being brought in because he needs a job. But is he trustworthy to be part of this group? So you have to have a whole lot of stuff to work with, just so that each character has a flavor and adds to the story. And before you can write your big story, you have to have interesting characters to put them into the pot
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
stir up stuff.
Mhm. So then the answer is yes then.
Yeah.
There's a lot more work. There's a lot more work to when you're doing what I'm the reason why I ask is because I think that I don't want people to get frustrated.
Hmm.
And a lot of them, as you know, some authors that are starting out build worlds that they never complete.
Right.
They have these epic, and that's fine. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that, but they get lost in it. Um, there's got to be some type of when organizing, you have to have kind of a set parameter, if you want to call it that, with 2 characters, 10 characters, whatever, but have it so that you've got some type of idea because you might end up developing another character through this,
Yeah.
you know.
Write a
Excuse me.
paragraph about what the character wants and what their frustrations are. Why, what's holding them back. And so, right, that's just enough there. Um, once you do 2 or 3 or 4 characters, that's all you need to get started
Right.
with. Now, and when you say world building, all you need is a page of what is this world all about. That's all you need. You don't need minutia.
Yeah.
Because basically, when you're working on trying to build this whole thing up, you're basically procrastinating.
Yeah. That's what I was getting at.
Yeah.
You're distracting yourself
Yeah.
from the task at hand.
Yeah.
And we already have enough distractions between social media, YouTube, everything, even this.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah. I mean, hopefully, well, we're not a distraction. We're just an encouragement and
yeah,
say,
and that's
okay,
what I
point
right.
yourself.
Yeah.
The point, you don't need to go and the only way you write is by writing.
Right. You got to do the work. And that's what I'm getting at. You can
Yeah,
watch us. That's why we keep it down to say 30 minutes, 20, 30 minutes,
yeah,
so that it's just enough to get you to the point where you're okay. The pen's going to meet the paper. Let's go.
yeah.
And let's
Just to, just
get it down.
right.
One of the things that helps me a lot, like I said, is drawing out the scene a little bit, even if it's a sketch.
Mhm,
You and I both work on a lot of thumbnail ideas and that kind of
mhm,
thing with both of our comics and our other books.
mhm.
So for me as an artist, that's just my way of doing it.
Right.
I think that a lot of people, especially if they're not artists, just write it out. Just write it
Yeah,
to the point where, not to the point where you're like telling us how tall the grass is of the air of the room, that unless that's a major part of the story,
yeah,
but get it to the point where you're making some headway.
yeah,
Set the goal for the day. Okay, I'm going to write 1,500 words or 2 pages worth of stuff, whatever, and
yeah.
kind of get towards that, and then celebrate with a cup of coffee or whatever. Get it
Right.
to the point
Well,
where you're, you know,
yeah. If you are, and this is, well, for example, when I do a comic book page, okay,
mhm,
let's say in the story,
mhm.
because we're still writing,
Sure.
it doesn't matter, and you could look at it as a piece of text. If you are writing 300 words in a page. Let's just, double space. And I'm just talking about that because let's do this, the old school way of double space everything so you can write and make notations.
Yes,
Okay.
that's a great
So,
idea. That's
yeah.
great
So,
with a red
and
pen.
yeah. And
Yeah.
basically you're going to have 24 lines
Mhm,
basically and 10 words per line. So
mhm.
240 words. If you start with on the top of you start with the first line and get down to the last line, the whole idea is for the reader to turn the page.
Yes.
All you need and that's what I do with a comic book because you start
Mhm.
with the first panel and then go down to the last panel. You got to
Yep.
turn the page and make sure that the reader wants to do that. Do that with your time. And now, so therefore, what happens is you don't have to fill it all the way up each line, but just sometimes it's just enough to have an idea. Okay, he talks like this. Your character is doing a certain thing. First line, then a second line some other character comes in, so on and so forth. And then get it to the point where there might be a little bit of a misunderstanding or a conflict or whatever it is that has to be resolved on the next page.
Yes.
Just
And
do that,
yeah,
and then and never leave. Always leave something that needs that it sparks the next idea for the next day. Don't just complete an idea without starting on to something else that has to develop from the previous idea. The
interesting.
whole like just
That's a really
otherwise
good
you need
yeah.
you need to you need a something to spark you and so that you don't feel like you're like, oh Lord, what am I going to do now?
How do you do that? Do you put like on the heading of the next page for tomorrow, or how do you do that? What's your
Well, a lot of times it's I know that um, the first thing I will write is basically what my beats are, my
okay.
stop points. So I will start on, I'll say, well, here's this beat and such and such. Okay, on one page. Then I'll go and work on. Then I'll say, okay, I know what this other. I'll know that in TV writing,
Mhm.
okay, or any kind of writing. I mean, you have a chapter, you have the chapter breakdown in a novel.
Okay.
Those are all beats,
Yes.
and if you don't think in those terms, then you don't know where to stop.
Hmm.
Here's the thing: there has to be a place where the reader could feel, okay, I've accomplished something, but I want to go to the next one. But at the same time, don't exhaust your reader
Yes.
without satisfying them, because a lot of times you're exhausting them with all kinds of minutia that they
Sure.
don't want to know.
Over the top, and you want it to be a page turner, and whether
It's
it's
a,
a comic or a prose book or whatever,
or
page turning is
historical.
important. Or
It
history. Yeah.
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter with history. If you're writing, a nonfiction, well, you've got to be putting your character, your reader, into the situation. So how do you make that person, reader, care about the nonfiction?
How are they invested? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so you still have to write beats. You still have to say, I'm going to say, this is the point I want to get across that
Okay.
historically. And you keep on doing that. But once again, do it in the simplest way manner, which is, what is the point of this story point? What
Mhm.
is it? What do you want to, not what it is that you're doing? What's the point of this beat?
Got
What
it.
is it that you're saying with this? And so, beginning that way is the simplest way. And you create your own, you develop your muscles to be able to lift and present more information, and you're getting to know what the character, it's all character development, even historically, because history is a bunch of characters fighting over over territory, not territory. I'm talking
A
about
struggle.
whether it be
Mhm.
emotional territory
Mhm.
or physical territory. The story of history is writing down what happened with these people. Why did they do what they did?
Yeah. What was the circumstance that brought
Yeah,
them to this? Yeah.
yeah.
One of the things I've done as a writer is I have a beginning and an end already established in my mind, and that's just
Mhm.
the way I write. You might not know the ending of your
Right.
story, so don't let that frustrate you.
Mm.
Um, I fill in between. It's like
Mhm.
I've got two bookends. I got cover to cover,
Right.
and then I fill in the interiors. I don't recommend that for everybody, but that's just the way that my mind works.
Hmm.
Are you that type of writer, or are you not?
I like to. I have a basic idea of
Hmm.
where I'm going with it,
Hmm.
and then I allow the characters to take me there. And sometimes they will switch the ending for something better. But
Right.
if you
Yeah.
start with really good, understanding of the characters, and then as you move and develop them, they take on a life of their own. They will tell you what they will or won't do.
Yes. Yes.
And that's like anything else. Any kind of journey should make the character different. Otherwise, what's the sense of the journey?
Correct. Right. That you're growing your character as the reader's reading and as you're writing. I mean,
Right.
it's all tied together.
Yeah. And that's not your final product. That's the whole thing. So
Correct.
we're talking the beginning. We're
Yes.
not talking about the final production.
Correct.
We're talking about your very first draft.
Yes.
That's all we're
Which, yeah,
talking about.
drafts are probably going to be the next thing that we're going to be talking about, because we've got a whole thing on editing and
Yeah.
all these things that tie
Yeah.
in together. But this is the basis. Basically, you're sitting at the traffic light and it just turned green.
Yeah.
That's where we're at right now in
Yeah.
the process. So,
Right.
and we don't want to frustrate you. We just want to inspire you. You
Right.
know.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's good, man. That's awesome. We're about the 30-minute mark, give or take.
Okay.
So, what do you think people should start doing then, right now, just as far as organizing? Get your characters down,
Yeah, I
get
mean,
the
what
idea
what
for the
are you
story.
what
Hmm.
the even if you want to start very simply with black and white,
Hmm.
okay?
Hmm.
Do that. And
Hmm.
then as they move from black and from white towards the center, what makes them do that? I mean, that's an exercise. A short story, you can do that. You
Yeah.
know, so think about like say a 10-pager. You know, I mean and if you're typing away, that's about 2,400 words.
Hmm.
That's once again, it allows you to do very simple stuff. You know,
And yeah,
and
and that might end up becoming the intro to some greatness. So
yes, yeah, there you go.
don't be afraid to make the mistakes. And
No,
you know what? Editing is once we get into editing, you'll know. Editing's where the magic happens in my eyes. So,
yeah,
but
yeah,
thank you, John. I think that
all
that
right,
was that's a good basis to start. You guys check out the last couple that we've done as well as the other Feed the Beast prior to this series,
mhm,
because it talks a lot about page turning and
mhm,
in the comic book format, which is
right,
it can be lended to prose books very easily.
right,
Whatever you're writing.
mhm,
Um, and then, yeah, that's it. So we should be back in a couple weeks.
yep,
I've got a few things happening with
mhm,
Comic Cons, and then I know you're doing some things too, John.
yep,
Um, yeah, cool. Yeah, so
okay,
get writing, guys. Get
yep,
to the point where you guys feel comfortable and get the words down. You know, whether
yep.
it's writing or typing, right?
Yeah, no, it doesn't matter. You know, you don't have to sit at a typewriter. You know, you can take up
Correct.
your notepad
Yep.
on, once you get spiral bound, you could do that.
Hmm.
And one of the cool things is that, if you do that, you know, um, the actual physical ability to write down something
Hmm.
develops your brain
Yes.
because you're actually seeing it. It's a piece of stuff and you've got it. Don't throw it away, and you don't need you can write, in the middle of the night, or you can write wherever you want without technology.
Yeah.
Just,
It can be low
pick up
tech as it
old
comes. Yeah.
school, just pick up a little pencil
Hmm.
and a piece of paper and just, scratch out some ideas.
Yep.
That's
Those
that's
are
not
sometimes
that
the
way.
best. Those are the best results I've found.
Yep. Yep.
So thank you, man, for taking some time out of your busy day, and I appreciate you doing this.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that you guys are checking out Feed the Beast. Check out everything we're doing here on Ted Davis Artistry as well as on John Celestri's YouTube page.
Yeah.
We're here. We're here to help. We're here to inspire. So
Yeah.
thanks again, John. Get
Take
writing,
care,
guys.
guys.
Yep.
Take
Thank
care,
you.
Ted. See ya.
You too. Thanks, John.
How do you fill in this blank page? Join your hosts, Ted and John, in the quest to create conflicts, characters, storylines, all that is needed to feed the beast.